right now, you learning to fail and support yourself through failure is going to be the skill that will crack open your life for the rest of your life. This is the stuff right here. And I think that's the thing we don't learn as kids, right? And so we get to adults and we get to business and we still have this idea that failure is this horrible negative thing that has all these bad consequences. And so we hold ourselves smaller than we need to be. And that really does prevent us from getting to the success we could have.
Hey, my friends, my name is Rick Mulready, and I'm an online business coach. I'm an ads expert, and I'm all about helping online course creators and coaches make more money in their business while working fewer hours. But most importantly, I'm a father and I'm a husband. With this podcast, you're going to learn exactly how to become what we here call the optimized CEO of your business. And that means you are optimizing your sales and marketing, your time, and your mindset, so that you can have more freedom, a bigger impact, and make more money. So grab a coffee, open up your favorite notes app. This is the Art of Online Business Podcast. What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in today. Super appreciate you. Hope all's going well, whatever you're up to right now. Now, I am recording this intro immediately after my interview with Neill Williams, which you're about to hear in just a second. And I normally don't do that. I normally wait in between, and which is a terrible idea, by the way. If you're a podcaster, and if you're not, and if you do your intros and outros separate from an interview or separate from whatever, do it as quickly as you can after, because it's so much fresher in your mind, and you have a different energy, by the way, around the intro, which that energy right now, just hanging up with Neill, I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. At the end of the interview, we challenge you with something, which we decided literally while this is recording in our interview, towards the end, we decide that we're creating a movement for 2022. And it all has to do with setting goals for the new year. And I'm going to leave it at that, because you've got to listen to, when we get to it, it's just like so for whether you know this or not, I start these interviews with a blank document in front of me. I have an idea of where I want the interview to go, meaning like what I think that you, my listeners, are going to get the most out of. And so I start with a blank document, and I always tell people, it's like you and I are sitting down for coffee, and you, all of my listeners, are there just to like have coffee with us and also learn, by the way, and basically get like a free training as we're talking about. And so today I asked Neill to join me on the show to share her expertise around planning and goal setting, because Neill is a master life coach, and she specializes in productivity and goal setting and mindset and money mindset. And she's one of our coaches inside of our Accelerator coaching program. She has calls with our members every 2 weeks. And everyone just loves Neill. Now, if you're new to the podcast here and you have not yet heard Neill in past episodes, she's been on a couple of times, must listens. But I asked her to come on here and talk about her recommendations on looking at how to plan for the new year, in this case for 2022. And you can use this on any year, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. But as we're recording this in late 2021, for those of you who either have not yet planned the new year or have planned it, this is going to be super, super helpful for you. So Neill breaks down, like when it comes to goals, she likes to say that there's two different goals, and I'll leave it at that. And she breaks down, the whole conversation is around what these two types of goals are and how to use them in our goal planning for the new year for 2022. We also talk about the mindset challenges that can come up and how to deal with those mindset challenges when we start setting bigger goals for ourselves. And we also look at like how to decide what kind of goal we want to set for the new year. And a lot of that can depend on, sort of what kind of season are you in your life and in your business. And you want to set a goal or goals that support that season, right? So many of us just set like this huge revenue number as a goal, just with no context behind it, just like, oh, I want to set that goal because of whatever. And that's all well and good, but let's be more intentional about, with our goals. Okay. She also shares what the failure feedback loop is. It's hard to say. The failure feedback loop, and how to leverage the failure feedback loop in planning for 2022. So you're going to walk away here today with a step-by-step goal setting plan for the new year. And then again, at the end of this interview, she says, you know what might be a fun goal for you to set for 2022? And then she shares what it is. And then you literally hear us kind of go back and forth on that. And the result of that, it was we come up with a movement that we're creating for 2022. And I'm really, really excited about this. And so, by the way, if you're a more established online course creator and online coach, and you're already very successful in your business and you're looking to take things to the next level to increase profit, increase impact with less hustle, then I want to invite you to learn more and apply. It's application only for my Accelerator coaching program. Okay. This is one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and a mastermind experience all wrapped up into one program. So if you want to learn more and fill out the application, we're taking applications, go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. All right. Without further ado, let's go hang out with Neill Williams. So when I made the decision, I should say, to do an episode about planning for 2022, I was like, there's no other person I want to have on here but Neill Williams to have on the podcast here to talk about this. Because I was looking at the calendar and I was like, we should talk about planning for the new year. And oh, by the way, it's the middle of November, and which shows you how much planning that I've done for the new year. But that's what we're going to be talking about here today. You've been on the show before. Welcome back. But for those people, we have thousands of new listeners of the podcast. So for people who do not know who Neill Williams is, can you share with us who you are and what you do in your business?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me back. So fun to be here. Always have such an amazing time talking with you on the podcast. Yeah, so my name is Neill Williams, and I am a master certified, deep dive certified coach. And I work primarily with entrepreneurs, but also the high achieving corporate hustlers. And I help those groups of folks really scale back their crazy work weeks. That's what I've been focusing on over the last couple of years. I'm also now a little bit transitioning into helping people. My goal really is to help people break the idea that hard work equals success is the only model in the world to achieve success, to make money, to live the lifestyle that you want. And so I'm also diving into a little bit of money coaching and incorporating the two together now in a program that I just piloted this year called 10K in 10 hours, where I help you figure out how to make money in a small amount of time. Because if you can do that, then you never have to believe that hard work creates success. You never have to hustle for money ever again.
Wait, when did that roll out? I didn't know about that.
New things happening all the time, Rick.
When did that roll out? And I should also say that Neill is one of our coaches in Accelerator. I have people tell me, they're like, yeah, I just go to Neill's calls and I get everything I need right then. I'm like, wait a minute, what about all this? But no, you personally coach our accelerators on all the stuff that you just mentioned, which is awesome. And so I'm honored to have you as part of that program. And you've been with Accelerator and me for a while now. And it's a huge part of the program. So I want to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about planning for the new year, because one of the things that you are so good at is looking at goals, setting goals, because so many of us, for example, and I did this for a long time myself, is set a goal that is totally achievable, that isn't really any kind of stretch for us, because we know that if we set a bigger goal than we think we could hit and we don't hit that goal, we make it so many we make it mean so many things about us. So then we kind of play smaller and set a goal that like, oh, I know I can hit that. So cool. We hit that goal and, then everything's working well. So when we're looking at, some people have already planned, some people have not yet planned for 2022. Where do we start when we're looking at setting up goals for the next year? Because a lot of people can start thinking about it and get overwhelmed. They're not really sure where to start. So why don't we start the conversation there? Where should people start as they go looking at planning for the upcoming year?
Yeah, I love to start the topic discussion of planning with goals in mind, because when we're making a plan, we kind of need like a destination, right? And that's kind of what a goal gives us, is like, okay, if we're going to make this plan to get somewhere, where is it that we want to end up? And how do we know if we even get there? And so I think about goals, there's like two types of goals in my mind. There is, to speak to what you just said a second ago, there is the goal that I really call like the achievement oriented goal, which is purely set to achieve, like to accomplish. And that kind of goal is totally fine. I don't want to give the impression that you shouldn't have those kinds of goals. I think they're absolutely fine. It all depends on what you want. That kind of goal, really, the way that I like to think about it, is pretty much 100% under your control, right? So it's like, here are all the steps I need to take to get this thing done, to accomplish this thing. Maybe it's a project, maybe it's something else. I will either do it or I won't, right? So it's like not dependent on anyone else, really. It's either you do it or you don't. And primarily we set those just to get something done, to accomplish something, to achieve something. So there's that kind of goal, that category of goal. And then there's the other one, which you just mentioned, which is a goal that is not set to be achieved, which many people listening would be like, wait, what? Why would you even set such goal? Right?
Yeah,
and
right.
The point of it is entirely different than the achievement kind of goal. Like that kind of goal is set for you to achieve it, to accomplish it. But the other kind of goal where you set is just for growth. That's literally it. Like you set a goal that requires you to grow in some way to be able to achieve it. The point of that goal is not to achieve it. The point of it is the growth that you have on the going after it. So let me stop there.
Okay, let's break that down for a second,
Yeah.
because that's a big concept that a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around, right? So it's like, why would I set a goal that pretty much know that I'm not going to achieve? And so like, why would we do you talked about like who we are becoming in the process,
Yeah.
right? Or the growth that I'm experiencing in trying to hit that goal. Like, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So you want to think about like the way that I think about it is, okay, if I set this goal, it's going to require me to either make leaps of change in my own mindset. That's one kind of growth. It might require me to master or get really good at some new skill that I'm not good at, that I'm going to have to do in order to get to that goal, right? There's going to be something that I'm going to have to change about me. It's like my own internal growth in some capacity. I'll have to do that in order to go after or try to accomplish that goal. So it's not like we're not trying to accomplish the goal, but the point of that goal isn't to accomplish it. The point is the journey that we take in going towards it, if that makes sense. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, totally. And like something that you and I have talked about before, it's also, so let's just say we want to do $5 million, whatever, in our business.
Yeah.
And we pretty much know that we're not going to do that, but this is our growth goal. And so so the idea is to make decisions through the lens of that $5 million CEO.
Totally.
So break that down a little bit for us from your perspective.
Yeah. So the idea with setting a growth-oriented goal like that is really cultivating the skill of making decisions and showing up every day and handling situations the way that you who has already achieved that big crazy goal that you don't know how to do yet would achieve it. That's the internal growth. So you think about like, okay, in order to like hit $5 million, maybe my business is at 2 million. I have to think bigger in order to hit 5 million than I'm thinking now to just recreate 2 million. So I have to start asking myself different questions like, well, what would I need to do in order to like more than double my business? Maybe I have to think about like what kind of new offer I would create or what new revenue streams and like how would I do that? I have to literally think differently in order to be that person who knows how to create $5 million. It also means that I have to start making decisions differently than I've made them in the past. Because if I keep making the same decisions that I have in the past, I'm just going to recreate the $2 million version of me. But that's not what I want. What I want is the $5 million version of me. And so I have to ask that me, which sounds very woo and very weird, right? Like how, I don't know, but you actually do know. Like if I was my $5 million me, what would I do here? And we could give up like some examples of things that might come up where you would think about it differently from the $2 million you versus the $5 million you, right?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Do you have any that come off the top of your mind?
Yeah. So for instance, one thing that I see a lot with accelerators and entrepreneurs in general is thinking about, okay, $5 million me, if I'm at $2 million right now, $5 million me, does that me, for instance, I'm just going to do like a coaching example. So maybe you got to $2 million in your coaching business, you're doing some one-on-one, but you're going to $5 million. Does $5 million me coach one-on-one? I'm guessing probably that's not part of the business model, right? Maybe, but probably not, right? It's not as scalable as like maybe a group or a membership or something like that. So that's the kind of example that you want to start, like, not that you make that decision overnight, but you start moving your business towards that. Like, oh, one-on-one's probably not part of this business model. So I'm going to have to start transitioning into this other business model that I see I can make $5 million with.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring all of your mindset stuff up. All of it.
Okay, well, talk about that before I'll share another example too, but talk about that for a second, because this goes into the whole, this isn't what most people think about when they're planning the year. Most people are thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to set a goal of $1 million next year or 500,000 or whatever it might be and say, okay, I'm going to break it down by quarter. I need to do this, this, and this to do this. But like what most people don't think about is exactly what you just brought up, is like when we think about that bigger goal and we start to be thinking like, oh, I need to be making decisions through this lens, then it brings up a whole bunch of mindset stuff. So let's talk about that for a second. What types of things does it bring up?
Well, it really brings to the surface all of the belief. I call them glass ceilings. They're like your own mindset beliefs that are like your glass ceilings. I call them glass ceilings because it's hard for you to see for yourself until you put yourself into a situation where it rises to the surface, right? Then you're like, oh, I don't believe I can make $5 million, or $5 million isn't possible for me, or I can't let my one-on-ones go, or I can't make this transition, or I can't make this change. Like all of the things that you believe now are the things that got you to where you are, but many of those things will limit you from getting to the next level. And that's really like one of the whole points of setting a goal like this, is for you to see very clearly what are those things that are, maybe they were great for me now, but I have to let them go in order to move to the next level.
So are we talking about a situation where, like, I'm getting kind of tactical with this, but like if we notice something, are we like literally like writing it down or like capturing it so that we're aware of it? Or like, how are we handling when we start to, well, actually, before I ask that question, what are some ways to make it easier to recognize when those things are coming up? Because they might be coming up for us, but we don't even realize that they're coming up. Or like, oh, this is one of those things that where my mindset is limited here, or hitting a glass ceiling, as you put, because I'm thinking through the lens of, a different level of business owner. Does that make sense?
Totally. I think the best way to gauge this is an awareness exercise, number one. And okay, if I'm just thinking with the brain that I have today, what decision do I make? And then you ask yourself, but if I like, what does my $2 million me say? Probably easy for you to come up with that because that's who you are today. But then if you say, well, what if I was $5 million me? If I was making $5 million, I had a $5 million business, I'm already there. What decision does that me make? And if those are not in alignment, you know there's something different about what you're thinking now and what you'd be thinking at that level. That's how you know.
So the inevitable question that comes up is someone's going to say, well, I have no idea what $5 million me, how that person thinks, because I'm not there.
Yeah.
If I were thinking that way, I'd already be there.
Right. And my response to that is you use your best guess. And this is a skill too, right? Like most people don't have the skill of thinking from their future and acting from their future because the way that the brain is structured, the way it's designed is to make decisions from your past, to use past data to help you make decisions today. And the only problem with that is if you vote for those decisions, you just keep recreating your past. If you want to create a different future, you can't rely on your past for those decisions. So it's really a skill to be able to dive into future you so that you can create the future that you want, even though your past tells you you can't do that yet because you haven't done it yet. But if you ask yourself those questions, I think that one of the biggest problems is we have been trained out of listening to ourselves and our own inner wisdom. We want someone else to tell us because that's what we've been trained to do from childhood, right? Like in school, you ask the teacher when you don't know the answer, right? You ask someone else. But this is a skill of developing deep trust and accessing your own inner wisdom, which again, people are going to think is really woo-woo, but it is literally one of the most powerful skills that you can create for yourself is to trust your own instincts and your own knowing. You will come up with an answer. Whether you trust that answer or not is the thing that we got to work on, because the answer you get from yourself is something that is true and you can rely on it. It's just that we're trained not to do that. And that's part of the skill, right? That's part of the mindset piece in cultivating that skill.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, Neill, I had a coaching call this morning with one of our accelerators, and they were saying that they consume content in a different way. Like they'd rather watch our recording and then while they're out doing their own thing, listen to it. And they use an example this morning of listening to one of your recent calls and having some huge light bulb moments go off for them. And then it was like, oh, I have questions now based on this. But then they said, I took note of them and like just thought through the questions. And because I was listening to the training through the lens of, oh, I can figure this out myself, they were answering their own questions that they would have asked you.
Which is what I want all of them to do. Exactly. Yeah. There's so many times where I get on those accelerator calls and I just ask the simplest questions, right? It's not like I'm like some genius or something. I just ask well-placed questions. You always have the answer inside of you. Then this is why I always tell them, I'm like, see, you already had the answer. You just had to ask the right question to access it inside of you. And that is the skill that I want all of them to develop, is being able to do that for themselves. They're like, I wish I had Neill in my pocket. Like, how would I get you in my pocket? One of them says that to me every single call. I'm like, listen, you already know. You just ask yourself questions and you listen to your answers. That's it.
Yeah. And it's creating the space for yourself to be able to do that.
Totally.
To be able to, and this person said, I often, and I don't know if we're talking about the same person, but they said WWND. What would Neill do? Is part of their normal day-to-day, CEOing, if you will, of their business. Yeah. And another thing that what you were just talking about brought up for me is that recently one of the members of Offer to Optimize jumped up from OTO into Accelerator because they were doing so well in their business and they weren't super comfortable being able to have conversations and so forth, in what she was accomplishing. And not that was wrong with it, but like clearly the business had gone to a new level, and she wanted to take her thinking to that new level as well. An exact example of what you're talking about. Well, she emailed us the other day and said, actually, I haven't told you this yet. She emailed us the other day and said, I haven't even had my kickoff call yet. And just from expanding my thinking, being around this group of people and watching the recordings and trainings and so forth, I did a promotion because I got an idea from something that somebody said, and she made her accelerator investment back within 11 days of
That
joining.
is phenomenal.
And yeah, and I'm like, that's what it's about, right? It's having like thinking differently.
Yeah.
And one more example before we get into like the, actually planning out, now that we have our achievement goals and our growth goals, understanding what those are, thinking through a larger lens of where the business is going. I had a conversation with somebody today, and they were having some challenges with a member on their team, and no one likes dealing with team stuff, like especially when, like it's confrontational, as people put it. No one likes to do it, but it's part of, like, this person has an amazingly successful business and can see huge growth next year. They've already seen massive growth this year, but even bigger growth next year. And the conversation was around exactly what we're talking about here, where it's like we have to be thinking through that future, that lens of future CEO, because the people that got us to where we are right now are probably not the people to take us through that next level, thus necessitating a CEO quote unquote conversation, even though it's going to be hard, or even though, it's being framed as being hard. It's just a different level.
And one thing I wanted to add to this that I'm not sure that I said this earlier when we're differentiating the two types of goals, like the accomplishment achievement goal versus the growth goal. Oftentimes the growth goal isn't something that is 100% under your control, right? And that's what makes it challenging too, because oftentimes, like, as entrepreneurs, we set revenue goals. Like, we're pretty notorious for setting revenue goals, right? And we like to keep setting the goals higher and higher and higher. And while we do have a lot of control over that, we can't make our people buy. So there is that little piece of like uncertainty in it.
Sure.
And that is also part of the growth process, right? Like, how do we handle uncertainty? How do we show up to uncertainty? We learn how we want to do that. And so that's the other piece that I really like about the growth goals, is that there is some uncertainty that we have to reconcile, that we have to kind of contemplate as we're going through it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you bring that up, because we have to be careful on what we're comparing to.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot, and I know you see this a lot too, but especially in the teacher entrepreneur space, the teacher author space.
Yes.
It's a big breakdown if, September revenue didn't surpass last September's revenue, or this month. And it's like, well, and a lot of people try to compare like this month, like this year, to like COVID in 2020. And it's just like, wait a minute. And it's fascinating for me because we work with a lot of teacher entrepreneurs in Accelerator, have been doing so for years, but like, it's that mindset of, I'm doing something wrong, or something must be wrong.
Yes.
If this month didn't beat last year at the same time, So now that we've laid that groundwork, we've got our achievement goal, our growth goal. How can we leverage that when planning out the new year?
Yeah. I think number one is deciding what kind of goal do I want to set for 2022? And I think we're under the mistaken illusion, because this is what we do as humans. It's either black or white. It's yes or no. It's all like, you have to have a growth goal. You do not. You just get to choose which one you want, right? So maybe you don't have any growth goal for 2022. Maybe you're like, listen, I know what? I've spent the last 3 years like growing a lot, and I just want to break from growth. Like I just want to kind of settle in for a year. I want to make sure that your listeners see like there is a spectrum here, and there are seasons of business, there are seasons of life. And making sure that you choose a goal that's really supportive for where you are and where you want to go. It doesn't have to be that we always push more growth, all of that. But if you do want to set a growth goal, that's where I say, let's start there. So that is the goal. And you know me, I like to have our students constrain, not set 10. Like, let's pick one and go after one at a time.
Which is super hard to do.
Totally. Because the entrepreneur brain is like, it wants to offer a million ideas. It has the shiny object syndrome every other day. Like, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, but this sounds so much more fun. I should do this instead. And then we change, or we just add on. We're like, oh, I'm going to just do 2 goals. And then it becomes 5 goals. And then it's 10. And then we're like, wait a minute, what happened here?
Yeah.
Right.
And then they all suffer because there's not focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, especially if you're going to do a growth goal for 2022, you pick one, only one, because there's going to be so much that surfaces like the reason for that goal is for your own growth, right? And so we want to pick those strategically, but also in a constrained way. So one of those. So if that's what you want to do, then I would say set that goal first. And then the way that I would do it is I would take the accomplishment goals and I would structure them in a way to help you get to that growth goal. So you might have like a quarterly achievement goal or a monthly achievement goal or something like that. And the great part about that is you're going to have some discomfort as you're going towards the growth goal. Like that's a part of it, right? Because you're learning, you're growing, you're changing. You're going to have failure if you set that kind of the growth goal. For sure, that's going to be part of your journey. And so when you have these other kinds of goals kind of coming alongside and you pair with them, at least you still have that, like the achievement, the accomplishment, that gives you a little bit of like excitement and like I'm making progress, I'm moving forward. So it's nice to pair those both together in that way if you're going to set the growth goal.
So can we break that down into, I don't know if this makes sense, an actual yet hypothetical example? So,
sure.
All right. So what would be a growth goal? Like, let's just make one up here.
Let's do something general that people might be able to apply. Like, let's just say the growth goal is I'm going to double my business in 2022.
Okay.
From whatever it was in 2021, we're going to double it in 2022. So already you'll probably notice if that's the goal that you set, your brain is probably going to freak out a little bit, which makes sense, right? Because it's a big goal to have set, and already your brain is going to want to say, but I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. Like already, if you just listen to the story you tell yourself when you set that goal, you're going to find a lot of your mindset things.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fun to see, right? Immediately, oh, here it is. So you might set that growth goal. Okay, so the goal is to double the business in the next year. And then you might ask yourself, okay, I'd like to take you to like that future place where like Rick, you and I are sitting together December 31st, 2022. We're having like a cup of coffee because we both love coffee. And we're talking about how you doubled your business that year. Like put yourself in that place and then just what would you tell me? Like, how did you go about doing it? And you just kind of do like a brain dump of all the things that you did to get to that goal.
It's an important note for everybody listening. Like if you do this exercise, or I should say when you do this exercise, it's not like all these things will work. It's just like Neill just said, like you're just brain dumping all the potential things that can get you to achieving that doubling the business goal.
Yeah. And that's such an important point because you're using your best guess based on what you know now and what you think you are going to be when it's doubled is telling you, right? So you get a list of all the things that you think you're going to do. And then I would like organize them like, well, I would do this first and this second, maybe even just like number them start to finish. And then I would take like the first one and I would decide, okay, when do I want to accomplish this by? And I would set that into my calendar. So like, let's say in doubling your business, like, what do you think, Rick? What would be one thing someone would want to do in order to double their business?
Yeah, like one simple thing could be increase the price of their offer.
Yeah.
One could be, oh, I need to sell more of these.
Yep.
Another one could be, I need to hire help to do X, Y, and Z. One could be, I need to increase the listenership of my podcast because I get a lot of, customers from my podcast. Or the same thing could be like for YouTube or what have you. Just ideas off the top of my head.
Yeah. So like, let's say that was the list that somebody came up with. Like if you were coaching them, what would be the first thing that you would say, let's do this first?
Well, I think the easy thing would be to increase the price.
Increase the price. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, what is the fastest, easiest thing here? Right? Yeah. So increasing the price. So then you might decide, okay, I'm going to increase the price by this date. Maybe it's January 15th, maybe it's January 31st, whatever it is. And then you start thinking it like that is an accomplishment goal, right? Because you're in full control of that when you decide to do that, how you roll it out to your people or how you tell them or communicate that, whatever. So that would be maybe like accomplishment goal number 1. I'm going to increase the price by January 31st. And here's how I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Like then you could start thinking like, okay, I'm going to do it by January 31st. And then within that accomplishment goal, I can say, I'm going to email my existing email list minus my students and let them know, hey, just want to give you a heads up that the price of such and such is increasing to this dollar amount after, from February 1st on. Here's an opportunity to get in now if you want to get this price.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So then you just think about, okay, what are the steps I take to increase my price? I mean, you make the decision, right? And then probably you have to get some coaching on all of the brain drama that you're going to have about increasing the price, what people are going to think about it, who's going to be upset, like all that, right? And that's why you join Accelerator to get the coaching that you need to fulfill on that. And then you're right. You just literally like think about the steps that you need to take in order to get that done by January 31st. And then you might look at the next thing on your list and you might say, okay, what is the next thing that I'm going to do that I believe is going to lead me to doubling my business? And you set a deadline for that one. And then you think about all the steps that you need to take to get there. So we're just kind of like filling in, we're like setting the major milestones and then we're backfilling from there. Now, I like to think about this as maybe you do this for quarter 1. Because here's what's going to happen when you set a growth goal. You are going to make your best guess for how you're going to get there, and you're going to make some plans and execute on those plans. But some of those are going to fail. You want them to fail because then you learn what you didn't know you needed to learn. So then you might take those learnings, those failures and learnings, and you might adjust your second quarter plan. And then you might execute the things on your second quarter. You take the failings and the learnings, and then you create your third quarter plan. All having it in mind, like the whole point of this is for me to try and double my business. It's the whole point of doing this.
So when you're planning, I like that. You're saying like, all right, let's just start with the first quarter because things aren't going to work and along the way so that you get to almost reset for Q2 and because you get to look at like what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
What can I improve upon, et cetera. So what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're not necessarily planning the entire year up front from a quarterly perspective.
I think you could have like big milestones. You could have like milestones you're trying to hit in each of the quarters. And you could do the detail if you wanted to. The thing that I notice is it's totally fine if you do that. I think it's fine either way. But if you do it that way with a growth goal where you try and plan out the whole year, you sometimes then don't take the learnings from the failing and incorporate those because you're like, well, I already set my plan. So if you're going to do that, totally fine, but be willing to be open and flexible and like be willing to let the plan navigate a little bit and pivot a little bit depending on what you learn from what you execute.
Yeah, totally. We get so tied to like, oh, but wait, I've already set my plan for Q2. I can't move it around, like I can't do anything to that.
Right. Right. And I hear students say this all the time, like, but I set my plan and I shouldn't change my plan. And I always say, well, who says? I mean, the whole point of the plan is to get you someplace, right? If you learn something that's going to help you get there easier, why wouldn't we change our plan?
Right. Right.
We kind of get stuck sometimes. Like there's this one way that we should do it.
Yeah. And if we figure out that there's a better way, we, like you said, we often get stuck in like, wait, I already set it up to do it this way. I can't change now for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So when we start looking at like, all right, we're going to set up for Q1, for example, and this is what, we've broken down, these are the, 5 things I think that can help double the business. We're going to prioritize, in this case here, raising our prices, raising our price of our flagship offer, let's just say. And we want to do it by the end of the month in January. And then we can look at, okay, what goes into increasing the price? Like what kind of messaging, what kind of, are you going to do a special promo or whatever it might be? Well, then someone might say, okay, that's a big thing that we've like, quote unquote, accomplished by the end of January. How are we treating the rest of Q1 at that point? Are we simply moving on to our next biggest priority?
You could like think about, okay, so what's the next thing on my list that I think I want to try to get myself to? And maybe you do take 60 days to accomplish that thing, right? You do want to have like a couple things. I like to think about like my work container, like what can I fit into my work container from this list? And what do I want to do? I always give myself that question too, like what I want to do in the first quarter to try. What am I willing to try in the first quarter to be able to double this, right? Instead of like telling myself that I have to, or I have to make through all this list. The whole point of entrepreneurship is to give us like a playground. And we put so much pressure on ourselves and like so much obligation. And I think that's part of what burns us out. So I like to just look at the list and be like, oh, that sounds like it might be interesting. I'm going to do that. That might be fun to do in the first quarter. Yeah. Let's try that.
So what kind of achievement goals are we setting? Because we're talking about the growth goal and the types of things that we can do to try and get to the growth goal.
Yeah.
You mentioned setting achievement goals along the way. Yeah. Like what would be an example there?
Yeah, like trying to think of the things that you said on the list. So number 1, achievement is increasing the price. That's an achievement goal.
Right.
Like you achieved increasing your price, right? You told your people about it. You gave them an opportunity to buy in at the lower price. And now here's where it is. Something else that you said, I think was...
Well, sell more of whatever the offer is. Sell more courses, let's just say.
Yeah. So this is kind of like a little mini growth goal inside of the bigger growth goal. So when you say sell more, I would say just be really specific about that. Like sell maybe in February. So I increase the price in January, and then February, my goal is to sell 100 of these or whatever it is, right? How would I go about doing that? Or maybe in the second half of the month or February and March, my goal is to sell 100 by the end of that quarter. I'm increase the price first, and then I'm going to try and sell this many. So that's a little bit of it's achievement, but it's also a little bit growth too, because again, anytime we're talking about selling something, like we're going to do everything we can to hit that goal. But at the end of the day, there's still a little piece of that is outside of our control, that's a little bit uncertain, because we can't force our people to buy that number, right? What I would say is having those along the way is really great because it allows you to experience failure. Like if you don't get to the 100, you just ask why, what happened? What do I need to change next time I try this goal to hit it, right? It's just this constant failure feedback loop that we get really good at. And that's what helps us get to success, is being willing to experience the failure feedback loop.
So Would you say that that right there is the key to achieving our bigger goals?
Totally. Totally.
And it's not, I didn't mean to like tee that up for you. That's like like seriously,
Like,
like
that's
a
it right
legit
there.
question. Like, is that what it boils down to?
If you don't take anything away from this podcast except understanding that the failure feedback loop is the thing that creates growth, that's all you need. Like, that is literally like the crux of it, right? Because in our society, we've been trained that failure is this really bad thing, that there's these negative consequences, right? Like, even in school, I'm watching my son. He's 12 and he struggles with math because he has a little bit of dyslexia. And so math is very challenging for him. So like last night, I was sitting at the table with him. We sit at the table and we do math homework like literally every single night. It's painful, excruciating for both of us, right? Like, we both want to cry by the time we're done with it. But it was so interesting to me to watch him from like this perspective, because he's so concerned about other kids seeing him fail already at age 12 in this math stuff. He's like,
Mm.
Mom, I'm the only one that's struggling with this. And I'm like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. I'm glad you're struggling with it because you're learning how to fail and come out of that right now. Of course, he's like, not that he agreed with me, I want to make it
Right.
clear, but I was trying to teach him like this skill
Whatever,
of letting
Mom.
yourself, exactly. Like, this is what he said to me, Mom, stop life coaching me.
Amazing.
But I'm like, no, buddy, this is the stuff like this right now. You learning to fail and support yourself through failure is going to be the skill that will crack open your life for the rest of your life. This is the stuff right here. And I think that's the thing we don't learn as kids, right? And so we get to adults and we get to business and we still have this idea that failure is this horrible negative thing that has all these bad consequences. And so we hold ourselves smaller than we need to be. We fail less or less hard than we need to. And that really does prevent us from getting to the success we could have.
I mean, I love that. And that, like you said, that's it right there. That's what this is all about, and incorporating that mindset into our planning for the new year. That right there can set us up for massive success in whatever success looks like for you.
Yeah.
So, and as one thought that came up here as we start to wrap up is like, I think that becomes easier for people to be willing to accept when they know they've already been successful, let's just say the previous year. And let's just say again, let's just say they're at a $500,000 business and now their growth goal is like, I want to double, I want to get to $1 million next year. Well, they've already been very successful to hit at $500,000. So it's like, okay, well, I know that I can repeat, because I'm always talking about do more of what works. I can continue to do that, but I can now add in these additional things that we're talking about from a growth goal perspective to try to play that bigger game of doubling the business. And if I don't hit that, I'm already doing what worked last year. So it's kind of like it's kind of a sense of, for lack of a better way to say it, security, if you will, even though there's no security. It's like, I know this works, I can do it. And then I can also do these other things. And if they fail, that's okay. I know what has been working, but I'm also learning from the failure.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, it's kind of like balancing both, right? Like, I want to make sure that everybody hears me say this too. We don't want to set the growth goal to be so big that your brain melts down and you stall out. Like, that's too far, right? And so many of us tend to do that. So we want to set a growth goal that gives us enough to work through at a time that it feels like we're making progress on our growth, but not so much that we like are stuck and stalling out and we like don't want to do our business and we don't want to do anything and we feel burnt out and completely depleted. That's not helpful. That doesn't serve you either. So we want to make sure we do balance that. And here's something that this just occurred to me when you were talking. It might be a fun goal for anyone who's listening to consider is like, how many fails would I be willing to give myself this year? Maybe you have a goal for a number of fails that you do. Maybe it's 50. To fail 50 times this year. Can you imagine, like, if we gave ourselves 1 year to just experience failure over and over and over again, how like resilient we would be at the end of that?
I think I might set that goal for myself.
I know. I was just thinking to
I like
myself, I'm
that.
like, maybe that's my goal.
So wait, okay. So in context, would that be your achievement goal or an
Yeah.
achievement goal? Okay.
Yeah. But think about how much, it's kind of a wild way to think about it. I hadn't thought about it until this just literally came to me right as we were talking. Like, it's a way to use achievement goals to create growth,
Did you just work that out right now in your head?
like literally right now.
I'm glad that I could be that we could be the container for you to do this because now I know you're going to use it. That's amazing.
Holding space for me to be able to think through that.
Glad we could help.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, let's just say you have 50. It's essentially one a week
Yeah. Right.
of like, okay, I'm going to fail at least once this week.
How amazing would that be?
I like that goal.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's start an Instagram movement like hashtag 50 fails. Who's in?
I think we should do that.
I know, right?
Okay, so here's an assignment for everybody listening right now. Okay. Number one, I want you to post on your stories, maybe a screenshot of this episode and use hashtag 50 fails. Tag me at Rick Mulready. And Neill, what's your Instagram?
At Neill Williams Coach.
At Neill Williams Coach. And Neill is Neill.
Correct.
Neill Williams Coach.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
I love that. And use the hashtag
Yeah.
50 fails.
And then, Rick, you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to do a recap a year from now or at the end of 2022
Yep.
on our journey to 50 fails.
And what we can do, I'm just thinking about this right now as well, for everybody who commits to doing that, who tags us using that hashtag, my team and myself will keep up with how you're doing and we can profile your growth on the podcast next year.
Totally. Amazing. Yeah. And I would have you on my podcast too. So you get 2 podcasts.
There you go.
Right?
2 podcasts that get a lot of reach. How's that for incentive for you to be failing every week for your business?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, for everybody listening, this is a blank doc. Like I tell everybody, and Neil's been on, so she knows, like, I start with a blank document in front of me when I do these interviews. And I know where we kind of want to go, but I tell Neill, like, hey, this is like you and I sitting down for coffee and we're going to talk about 2022 planning. That's it. And look at where we've ended up here.
I think it's just so amazing. Like, I knew this happens every time we talk because we're just like, we pitch and catch really well.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, what an amazing model this would be. Like, just think about the contribution of like this experience this year. Those of you who are going to like go in with Rick and I and do the 50 fails, to our kids, to other entrepreneurs, to the humans in our culture who think about failing as this thing that means we're not worthy, that we are somehow less deserving, and changing that entire attitude.
Yeah. I love it.
I know. Me too.
I love it. Yeah. It's one thing that and you and I have talked about this. It's one thing I'm trying to, I mean, Maya turns 3 in a month from now. But I'm trying to be an example for her in showing her, I mean, among many other things, that like just exactly what we're talking about. Failure isn't bad. We learn from it. And so as she starts bringing up things that happen or at preschool and stuff like that, yeah, it just allows us to be an amazing example for people in our lives when we're doing that.
Totally. Because can you imagine if like the entrepreneurs that we are now and our students, like if they had this idea baked in already that like, no, failure is a good thing. Like, can you imagine the crazy levels of success that we would see? Like crazy off the chain.
Okay. Hashtag 50 fails.
So fun.
Take a screenshot of this episode, share in your stories, tag at Neill Williams Coaching and tag me at Rick Mulready. If you commit to this, we are going to, sounds really weird. We're going to keep track. We're going to touch base with you and stuff like that and make sure you're doing it. And then next year, we're going to do a follow-up to this and see how your business and your life changed as a result of being okay with failing a whole lot more. And on this podcast here, and then also on Neill's podcast, which, by the way, tell people about your podcast and where people can connect with you outside of Instagram?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Unbusy Your Life. And the whole idea behind that is that I share time management, but also a lot of mindset stuff on how to, I really want to eradicate the epidemic of being too busy and really think about lifestyle and what enough is for everyone. So I teach a lot about that on the show. And you can connect with me, like Rick said, on Instagram at Neill Williams Coach. My website with my current offerings, anything you want to know about me is www.neillwilliams.com. Or come join Accelerator and then I get to coach you.
All within Accelerator every 2 weeks.
That's right.
So Neill, so much fun as always.
Yeah.
Not surprising at all. So thank you for coming back on the show. And I super appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having it. This is like, I feel like we just have the most amazing conversation. So I'm so grateful to have had this one with you. I had no idea where it was going to go. Like we literally had no idea what path this was going to take. And it was amazing.
We've set up this whole new hashtag thing.
I know, right? Created a movement in one episode.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Thank you. All right. Are you in on the hashtag 50 fails movement for 2022? I mean, can you imagine what your business could be like as a result of failing at least once a week? I'm definitely going to be doing this. And so again, tag us on Instagram, take a screenshot of the episode here today, use hashtag 50 fails and tag me at Rick Mulready and then tag Neill Williams. So at Neill Williams Coach. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and as you heard kind of throughout the episode here today, talking about our Accelerator coaching program. This is a one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and mastermind experience, all wrapped up into one program for established, more advanced online course creators and online coaches who you want to take your business to the next level, but you're not quite sure how to get there. You're not really sure what steps to be taking. You're often overwhelmed. So many people are heading towards burnout, are already there, and you just want to improve your sales and marketing, improve your systems and processes, and improve your mindset so that you can up-level your business. And we help you do that through the lens of we help you achieve more profit, because it's all about profit, right? Top line revenue is great, but it's how much of that is actually going in your pocket. So more profit, more impact, meaning how many more people are we helping and what does impact mean to you? All accomplishing those things with less hustle, right? As we talked about here today, you heard it from Neill. It's not about how many hours we're working, right? So we're achieving this through less hustle. So if you want to learn more and apply, it's application only. Go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. All right, my friends, super appreciate you. Thank you as always for tuning in today. Until the next episode, be well, and I'll talk to you soon.